You can't see where you.
Oh, okay. Good morning. Thank you all for joining in person and online. Pam McDaniel is here to lead us today in our worship workshop, and we'll get started. Okay, Pam.
I have a beginning question for y'all, and just telling me church policy and your preference. Mask on, mask off if I stay up here. Off.
Yeah, I think we can't hear you as
Got
well.
it. But I'll stay back. I need to stay back here anyway so that I stay in the camera here. So that's good. Y'all know that I am always excited to come to Homewood. I'm particularly excited to be here today because the topic of children and worship is one of my favorite topics. It's something I feel very passionately about. And I'm grateful that Homewood clearly recognizes and values the importance of children and worship. It's evidenced by you being here on a Saturday when time is precious on a Saturday, and also by the things that you are doing in your new sanctuary. You're providing welcoming places for children and families in your sanctuary, and I'm grateful for that. I do want to make one word of clarification right here at the beginning. Our session topic today is children and worship. We know this, but I will feel better for having said it. We know that worship occurs in any setting. You can worship in your home, in your yard, in your car. For our purposes today, we're specifically focused on worship in the church setting. Not meaning to imply that worship doesn't happen in other places, but for our conversation today, worship in the church setting. You might hear me refer to it as congregational worship, worship that happens in the context of the family that have gathered, the people that have gathered in the worship room to worship together. I have a favor I'd like to ask, some help maybe. This is a great representation here today. We've got families with children. We've got people here who care about families with children. We've got people here who care about Homewood, and this is what church is, the grouping of all of us. But to get us started, if you are someone, and I don't know if can our online people respond? I think they can. Yeah, if you are someone who will have a child with you during worship, like tomorrow morning, if you might have a child sitting there with you in the worship service, or at some point in the future, you might have a child sitting with you in the worship service. I'm going to put you on the spot. I apologize. Just a minute. If you would choose to, would you help us to get to know your children a little bit as we begin this morning? And I'd like you to do this. Would you tell us, you can say the names if you want to, if you prefer just to say the ages of the children that you might have with you in the worship room, and what animal that child most reminds you of. So if that child were to be an animal, might be your family child, a grandchild, a child from your neighborhood that you bring with you, age of that child, children, and what animal they most remind you of. While you're thinking, because I put you on the spot, while you're thinking, I'll give you an example. I come from a background of having 4 children with me in worship. And my background is I typically brought them into the worship room with me when they were about age 3. I come from a background where the church actually provided care for them until they were 4. That was just the tradition of that church. But I typically brought them into the room with me when they were about age 3, which meant I had 4 children, which meant for a while I had a 3-year-old in worship with me. Then for a while I had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old in worship with me. And then for a while I had, it's hard, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old in worship with me. And then for a while I had a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, I did it wrong, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, and 11-year-old in worship with me. And if I were to name what animal they remind me of, and this is not in chronological order, so don't try to figure out which child I'm talking about. I would say over the course of time, I had a dolphin, a tiger, kind of getting the picture. I had a koala, and I had an owl in worship with me. Okay, your turn. Who has children with you and what are their ages and what animal would you say they remind you of? Who wants to go? I'll put you on the spot.
Well, I will go tomorrow. The boys will be with us because they're spending the night tonight. And so we have Titus, who is 6, and he would be probably a cheetah because he is everywhere. And Gavin, who is 8. I don't even know. I can't think. Yeah, something. I don't know what I still have to think about the Gavin.
This is on the spot. Yeah. So at least that we know a cheetah. There's a possibility of a cheetah being in the worship room with us. Who else?
Yeah. Morning. I have Jacob. He's 9, and I would say he reminds me of a monkey.
A monkey. All right. You can kind of see where I'm going here, right? We got a cheetah, we got a monkey. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else?
I have Hayden and Miriam sometimes, but sorry, I have no idea.
Go with your perspective. And by the way, if there's more than one from a household, both of you give your perspective. Yeah. What, from your perspective, what animal would you say those children most remind you of? That's what we're talking about. If you have children in worship with you, what animal do they most remind you of?
No.
Yeah, and this is all said in love. I missed the animal you said though. What'd you say?
A hyena.
I've already confessed I had a tigger. Anybody else? Oh yeah, somebody over here? Okay, well, we get the idea. The point is we are sharing worship with a wonderful menagerie of children, aren't we? I've forgotten all what we said now, hyenas and monkeys and cheetahs and sometimes koalas, sometimes owls. And aren't we grateful for each one that's there? Aren't we grateful that these animals, these precious children, are growing up in the arms of the church that's Holmeswood? I know I am. And I want you to know that in these days leading up today, I have specifically been praying for the children, for each of you, for the adults who care about children at Holmeswood, and for our time together today. We are grateful for God's hand of care on all of us. Amen. You should have gotten a handout when you came in. If you didn't, I think they're on the table back there, or Laura may have some back there. You have a handout and you have something to write with.
And there's a link I put in the chat for them to get to the PDF.
And you all have a link, yeah, that you can get to it. Excellent, good. All right, everybody got one. At the top of your handout, it says, I jumped for joy when they said to me, let's go to the house of the Lord. You got any joy jumpers at your house? Are you a joy jumper when it's time to go to the house of the Lord? Wouldn't it be a different day if we were all joy jumpers when it was time to go to the house of the Lord? Letter A, getting started. Number 1, what is your goal for today? Now, we represent different categories in this room. We come from different situations. You have a different reason for being here. But I would encourage you to take a moment and write down your goal. The reason for that is it helps give clarity to our thoughts. If you can put into words why you're here today. It's helpful if we can name at the beginning what we want to accomplish at the end. So take a minute and think, why am I here? What's my goal for today? And then when you're ready, if 1 or 2 people want to share, what's your goal? Why are you here? Anybody want to share? Why are you here today? Yeah.
My goal is to, my grandkids do not come to church regularly. So I would like for them to look forward to coming, because I think that's an avenue to get parents involved. So I think they like Sunday school, but they hate church because it's confining. We're always going to, because people around are disturbed. So they it's like, don't make me go to church. And so
That
I'd
is-
like for them to feel comfortable being in an environment where they can feel comfortable and look forward to coming.
Creating an atmosphere where children feel comfortable and look forward to coming to the worship service. Anybody else? Let's keep that one in mind. Anybody else? A goal for being here today?
Well, I wrote, learn about integrating worship in everyday life.
Ooh. Learn about integrating worship into everyday life. Keep that one in mind. Let's have one more. Anybody else want to share? Erin?
Maybe like specific tips and strategies or in the moment teaching. Why do we sing this song? Why do we say this prayer? The elements of the service.
Let's keep that in mind. At the end, if we have not addressed the goal that you wrote down, call me on it and let's make sure we spend some time. If we haven't touched on the goal, let's make sure we leave some time at the end to do that. Thank you. We want to keep all these goals in mind as we move through our conversation today. Thank you. Number 2 on your handout, because today we're specifically talking about children in worship, we want to take a moment and get ourselves the mindset of viewing worship from a child's perspective. So go back in time with me for a minute. If you yourself attended worship in church as a child, what do you remember about that? What would you want to keep the same, or what would you want to change for the children at Holmeswood today? You got it? If you attended worship yourself in church as a child, what do you remember about that? Can you remember it? What would you want to keep the same? What would you want to change for these children? Thoughts?
Well, I didn't grow up in the Baptist tradition, but when I went to church, there was nothing for children. You had to just sit there and be very, very quiet. That's all I remember about it. I don't remember being spoken to or any kind of, and so I would like, obviously, for that to change.
Change.
It's not like that here, but
Well, your memories. You would
my
like
memories.
a change for church to be a place where children are involved and welcomed. They feel like they're a part of it. You know, a specific memory as a child when you were in church, in the worship service.
This may seem awful or self-serving, but I learned to read both music and words in worship because of hymnals. I learned how to sing parts because I could do the melody and then my voice changed and I could do the harmony. And then my voice changed more and I could do tenor and then bounced in bass and then went back to tenor. But anyway, that was very important to me. My mother was in the choir and it was not a huge church. And so I was never out of her eyesight. She didn't sit beside me. I had to sit by myself. So
You know, that act of just running your finger under the line while you're singing, even just that act is a very good foundational learning to read exercise, isn't it? Yeah. Let's have one more. Memory from child. Yeah.
So on that note, I have memories of singing hymns, not learn how to sing well, as Allison did. I don't have a good singing voice, but I do remember singing hymns. And then I remember the children's lesson where, like Laurel does, all the kids would go up to the front and there's a children's lesson. Our pastor's wife always did that, and she had a puppet called Brother Monkney. It was a
Brother what?
Brother Monkney. Monkey
Okay.
that she always like interacted with to do the children's service. That was always fun. And then we always had the coloring sheet, like the bulletin on the back was the coloring sheet. So it kept me quiet, I guess, during the service.
So your memory is things that were provided for specifically for the children to make them feel a part. Keep those in mind as we go through, and over the course of weeks, let that be something you touch back on. What do I remember as a child? What would I want to keep the same? What would I want to change for today's children? Let's move on to number 3. Number 3, I'm going to call it a big question. You can tell because I wrote it in big letters. It's capitalized. The question is, what is worship? Don't answer yet, but what is worship? Today we're talking about children in worship. We use that word with ease, talking to one another, talking with children. We say, today we're going to the worship service. Miriam, let's stop at the restroom before we go into worship. Have we taken a moment to talk with our children or even ponder for ourselves what worship means? If I were talking to Audrey, I might say, Audrey, I'm excited that I'll see you in worship tomorrow. Have we ever talked about what worship means? Can I tell you what I think about when I think about worship? Take a moment and pretend you're talking to a child. I'll tell you a little, what I think is a jewel. When we talk with children, when I'm talking to precious Hayden, I strip away all those extra words, don't I? All that fluff that we use. Well, worship is la da 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 da. But I get it down to the nugget, to the core of the matter, to the heart of the matter. And so I'd look for words that say to Hayden, worship is nugget. What am I going to say? What would you say? I have a suggestion I'm going to offer, but anybody want to offer another one? Because we're in this together. We're sharing ideas. You want to give a stab. If you were talking to the monkey, to the cheetah, you would say, I wonder if I've talked with you about, we've had a conversation together about what worship is. Worship is, take a stab. Made you nervous
Time
now.
for learning about God.
Time for learning about
Praising
God. Praising God. Praising is kind of a worship, but it is. We're praising God. And by the way, that's a word we can teach them. What do we mean by praise? They may know.
Time with God.
Time with God.
I think it's a time to show God we love God as a whole group of people.
Yeah. Pick one of these, and I'm going to offer one also. Pick one and write it on your sheet so that as you're in conversation with children, you have language to use. A suggestion that I'll offer, and it kind of encapsulates all that you've said, worship is a time we give to God. Worship is a time, but pick one of these others if it resonates with your language better. Worship is a time we give to God. And I might explain, I might go further and say, it's a time we give to God our time in worship. That's what some of you said. We give to him our time. We're not doing other things. We're giving God our time right here. We're with God. We give him our thoughts. We're thinking about God. We're learning about God. We give him our thanks. We say thank you with our words. We say thank you with the songs we sing. We give him our love. Worship is a time we give to God. Does that resonate? Does that feel? And practice it. Come up with the words that work for you. But I do think it's important to have. Didn't realize Charlotte was back there.
They were going to leave her home, but they decided not to.
Y'all, I made you just leave a minute. Think on that though. If that phrasing is not one that resonates with you, find one that is. I have found that phrasing is comfortable for me when I talk with a child. Worship is a time we give to God. We give to him our thanks, our thoughts, our love, our time. Also want you to know that if that's the definition we use, we're describing action. Give is an action. Worship is active. So we're going to come back to that in just a minute. Any more thoughts or comments about that? What is worship? For our conversation today, I'm probably going to keep going back to that. Worship is giving to God. Worship is a time we give to God. Take a look at number B. I'm going to call B on your little handout kind of a side door we're going to open, but I think it's an important side door to open. So we're going to open this door and memorize this. And that is no judgment. No judgment. You know how it is. Anytime we're in a group of other people, even in the church, even in the worship service, we can feel looked at and judged. Sometimes the judgment may be meant positively. Oh, look at them. They're the perfect family. Sometimes it's meant not positively. Oh, look at them. They're not, whatever. As best we can, we want to work towards diminishing, if not eliminating, any attitude of judgment when we're in that room. We want to cultivate an attitude of gratitude. We are so grateful for every person, every child, every cheetah, every owl, every tigger that's in that room. We are grateful for every person, and we're going to assume that every person is doing the best they can in that moment. We have no idea what's going on in that household in any of our households before we got to church. So continuing on looking on your handout there, we're going to remember that every child is different. Remember those little animals we just named? Some children are naturally more sedate. I had a koala. Koalas. They just sit there and want to cuddle. Oh, I got this down pat. I also had a tigger. We had cheetahs. Every child is different. We're not all apples. We're not all oranges. We're all wired differently. The adults are different. Every person in this room comes from a different background. You have a different perspective. You have a different tolerance level. You have different expectations. So keep all that in mind. Every week is different. We don't know what's happened in your household that week. Maybe somebody was sick. Maybe somebody traveled. Maybe grandmama was there and upset the schedule in the household. You never know what's going on. Any given moment is different. So this side door, I just want us to look into for a minute let's keep that in mind. It is so easy for us to feel like we are being judged when we're in a group. It can also be easy for us to output judgment. Sometimes the judgment is towards another person. Sometimes it can even be toward our own child. Sometimes it can be towards ourselves. Why can't I do better with this? We want to do the best we can to minimize or eliminate judgment. We're all different. We've all got different situations. It can be mentally helpful, maybe, if we strive to think, now, why am I here? What is worship? I'm here for the purpose of giving to God. I'm not here to impress anybody else in this room. I'm here for the purpose of giving to God. No judgment, as best we can. Comments or thoughts there? Let's move on. Letter C, the important thing. Y'all can tell I worked hard on these subject headings. Not that anything we've already talked about isn't important, but I would label this one the important thing. And it's a question. This is a question I'm going to read out loud to you, but I actually do not want anybody to answer this question. This is a deep question. This is a personal question. This is, I want you just to think inside yourself question. And the question is, what do I want for children when they attend a worship service? What do I want for my child? What do I want for Owen when he attends a worship service? What do I want for Jacob? What do I want for Miriam? What do I want for the children I see in the room? What do I want for children in a worship service? Let's take a minute and think about it. I'm going to suggest that the way we answer that question, it's an important question. What do I want for children? Why do I bring them? What do I want? What do I want for them in there? I'm going to suggest that the way we answer that question directly impacts my perspective on children in worship. It's going to be like a mental round the corner, change directions perhaps for me, or clarity for me. It's also going to directly impact my behavior with children in the sanctuary, in the worship center. What do I want for children? Forming some thoughts in your mind. What do I want? Don't answer out loud. Let me give you an example. I might answer that what I want for my child, I really want them to learn to sit still and be quiet. and not bother me or anybody else during this long hour of the week. That might be what I want. And if I want that, and there may be some weeks when that is what I want. And when I want that, there is a set of behaviors that I can employ to try to reach that outcome. I want my child to sit in the front. Is there anything else that we want? In addition to being a respectful person in the sanctuary, is there anything else that we want for our children? I'm going to offer a suggestion, a way that you might ponder answering that question, see if it sets with you or if not. A suggestion that I'll offer. What do I want for children in worship? I'm going to tell you a suggestion, but I'm going to tell you also, I can hear you think, that's simple. That's a simple response. It is or is it? Suggestion. What do I want for children when they come to worship? I want my child to feel love while they're hearing about God. On the one hand, doesn't that sound simple? I want Owen to feel love when he's sitting in the room hearing about God. I want Hayden to feel love. I want Jacob. I want the children to feel love. I want Charlotte to feel love while she's sitting in the room hearing about God. On any given Sunday, all I can accomplish, it's been a rough week, rough day, and all I can accomplish is knowing that my child feels love while they're in that room hearing about God. Let's think about the foundation that's being laid. On one hand, simple. On the other hand, quite profound. My child is hearing the word God, singing God, or saying other words of our faith. And at the same time, my child is feeling loved by my family, by the people in the church. The child is beginning to make a connection. In this room, there is God. In this room, there is love. In this room, I am loved. In this room, I can love. God is love. I am loved. It actually gives me chills when I say that. If I can accomplish anything with children in a worship setting, I want them to feel love while they're hearing about God. Thoughts, reactions.
That's what I just wrote.
Oh, we have a star student.
But for me, given that I'm from a different country, right, he knows that his family is across the world. So that speaks a lot to me because it's teaching him that wherever he's at right now, he's loved, right? And you can learn to love from here and spread it out.
All right, y'all, we just had church. Yes. So then my question becomes not just what can I do to keep my child still and quiet in the worship service, but how can my child best experience my love and God's love while we're in here together? How can my child best experience my love and God's love while we're in here together? I'm waiting for somebody to say, yeah, that sounds really pretty, Pam, but how are we going to make that happen? Worship is hard. My child's wiggly. My child's loud. I'm tired on Sunday mornings. Anybody relate to that? Okay, let's open up your handout. Let's move to the inside. The inside is some possibilities and practicalities. I do want my children to experience my love and God's love when they're in the sanctuary, when they're in the worship room. But it's not easy. They're not little robots. Again, they're dolphins and owls and cheetahs and monkeys and all these things that they are. It can be hard. Y'all might be interested in knowing that in an unabridged dictionary, this beautiful word worship, to give to God, this beautiful word in an unabridged dictionary comes after these words: warn, worn out, worry, worsen, and then worship. Is that starting to feel a little bit more like get out the door and get to church and have a child with you, just like Carrie on Sunday mornings? I recently on Facebook read this. I thought, oh, this is appropriate. Whoever wrote the song "Easy Like Sunday Morning," y'all know that song? Easy like Sunday. Whoever wrote that song obviously never had to get children ready for church. Okay. All right, let's move on then to some tips and some possibilities and practicalities. We're on the inside of your handout now. How are we going to cultivate this atmosphere of love on Sunday mornings when it's not always easy? You know, it sounds, but it's really when the wheels get on the road. Number one is a simple one, and it's one we all know. And it's not just in houses with children, but for all of us. If we begin our prep work on Saturday night, doesn't that open up some ease for us on Sunday morning? So do things like let the children pick out their clothes, you pick out your clothes, pack the diaper bag, get your purse, get the snacks, get the offering envelope, anything that you're going to need for Sunday morning, do it on Saturday night. Just think, maybe you already do that. Just think, if you don't, think about the openness, that little chunk of time that would open for you on Sunday morning, if you've gotten that done on Saturday night. Also, a word about shoes. I don't know that this is a verified fact. I can just tell you from my own experience, I usually felt like more shoes were lost on Sunday morning than any other day of the week. So find those shoes on Saturday night. Use Saturday as your prep time. Get as much as you can done on Saturday before Sunday. Also, this is obvious, but give a thought to your Saturday night bedtimes. It might not be the best night to be a late, depending on the season and the stage of your family and you, it might not be the best night to be out late. That's obvious. So prep on Saturday night. Number 2, keep Sundays joyful and simple. I read this one time. I don't know that it's not an exact analogy, but it does a little something in my head. I read one time that how we love our family and friends every day, but their birthdays is a special day where we celebrate them in a special way. The analogy was to think about Sundays that way too. Again, it's not exactly the same, but it kind of does a little something in my mind. If I think I love God every day, I celebrate God every day, I worship him every day, but Sundays can be my special day. You know, it's my special day of celebration. So think, all of us, not just families with children, all of us, what can we do in our home to bring that celebration element into Sunday mornings, to help Sundays be our joy, our extra joyful day, not our, what was it? Worn out, worry, worsen day, but our joyful day. Things like, here's a simple tip. Make you a playlist. Maybe some of you already have this. Make you a playlist of Hallelujah, Jesus Loves Me songs. Let that be the first thing you turn on Sunday mornings, so that your household is waking up to joyful Jesus music on Sunday mornings. It's a little hard to be grumpy when Jesus Loves Me is ringing in the air. So make you a playlist. You have, and Alan helped me with this, but you have the advantage that your staff, who does such a great job of putting together your worship service in ways that are connected and tell the central theme of that day, you get that order of worship emailed to you ahead of time. So you could they, I don't know if there's a copyright or anything, but if they wanted to, they could find maybe the songs that are actually being sung that Sunday and put them on your playlist, play it in your house that morning, play it in the car on the way to church. Not only is that creating that joyful attitude, it's also getting you as the adults and your children acclimated to the songs that you'll be singing that day. Some of them, they have copyright issues, but some you could probably find. So
Most of them you could probably find because they are copyrighted, but YouTube has everything. So anyway.
So joyful music in the house. Check our attitudes. You know, are we complaining about Sundays? Are we dragging our feet? Are we excited? You know, children are going particularly in the early years, they're going to catch the attitude from us. You know, are we excited about going to worship, going to give to God with our friends at church? Or are we, I can't believe I have to get up this morning. You know, this is so hard. So check our attitude. Anything that we can do to keep Sundays more simple meals. Think about that a minute. If making a big breakfast or a big lunch is a way that brings joy to your family, go for it. That's a thing that brings stress to your family. Maybe Sundays isn't the time to do that. You know, maybe your Sunday breakfast is banana and a piece of cheese, maybe in a glass of tumbler that has confetti and sparkles on it, you know, because you're excited about today. So maybe a special cup, but not something that's going to stress you out and have you already exhausted by the time you get to the church door. Sunday lunch, sandwiches are fine. Sandwiches maybe that are a picnic on the den floor when you get home. Maybe you have friends over and eat around the table. For each of you, just you think about what would bring joy to you and your family on Sundays. Not complexity, not stress, but joy. Any thoughts you want to toss out there? All right, we're fixing to get into some meats of things now. All right. We talked about prepping on Saturday night. We talked about working to cultivate an attitude of joy in our homes, in our car. Oh, I meant to say in our car. Check what your conversation is in the car. The car can often be a place where we can talk with excitement about things, or we can complain about things. And that's going to that's going to affect our attitude. It's also going to, children are listening, whether we are celebrating or complaining in the car. All right, we get to the church. We're ready for the rubber to hit the road now, all right? In the church, we have children with us. We're in a room where children are. We've said we want them to feel love while they're in the room. There's something else that helping adults, and that's what I'm going to call you. If you're an adult who has a child with you in the worship service, you are a helping adult. If you are a child, if you are a person who is in the room with them, you are a caring adult. You're all important. The helping adults have another job once you get to the church, once you get into the worship room, and that is you need to help your child learn to worship. I think that may be a blank in your handout. Put it down. Our job as helping adults is to help our children learn to worship, which means the helping adult will need to be actively engaged with the child during that worship time. It is not your hour to be peaceful and still and quiet. Hopefully you'll have some of those moments, but it's also your hour to be actively engaged, to be whispering with your child, pointing things out to your child, helping them to know what they can or they can't do during parts of the service. It is work. It is work for the helping adult and caring adult. We're going to come back to this in a minute. I want those of you who have children with you in the worship service, I'm giving you a heads up. I want you to be thinking of ways that you might ask caring adults, how can they support you in this work that you're doing? So be thinking about that. We've got a lot of caring adults in this room. So be thinking, if you have a child with you in worship service, not yet, but I'll ask it towards the end, be thinking, what are ways, specific ways they can help you with your child in worship service? But our job as the helping adult, I have a child sitting next to me in the worship service. It's a big one. I want to help my child learn how to worship. And that is actually a way that they receive love in the service too. Remember, I want my child to feel loved. When you're helping them to worship, I'm normally a walker. When I'm helping them to worship, number one, I'm giving them my attention. You know, if Hayden is sitting next to me and I'm helping her to worship, I'm going to be saying things like, oh, Hayden, look, I know that person in the choir. She teaches in your BFG class. I'm going to be engaged with Hayden, drawing her attention to things that are happening in the service. So I'm giving her my attention. That's the way that she feels loved. Another thing I'm doing is I'm sharing part of my heart with the child that I'm sitting with. I'm saying, this is an important time for me. This is when the pastor is teaching me about God, and I want to listen to this part. Will you help me listen for whatever it is I'm going to ask them to listen for? I'm sharing part of what's important to me with the child. That's the way they feel loved. The other thing is I'm saying, you're important to me. You're important. I want you to learn to be a part of what we do in this room. You're important. I want you to be included and valued and welcomed when we do these things. So when I'm engaged with my child, helping them learn to worship, I'm also helping them to feel loved. You get that? I'm giving them attention. I'm saying they're of value. I'm sharing my heart with them. I do think Holmeswood, I am so excited for what you have upcoming in your sanctuary renovation. You have physical spaces that are saying to families with children, you are of value, you are wanted, you are loved. We welcome you into this space. And I know y'all had meetings about this, and I may not have it all exactly right, but my understanding is that in your new facilities, and the pictures have been brought in if people want to look at them, you have designed a welcoming place for Charlotte. You have a place where moms and young babies can be if the mom needs to nurse the baby. You have a place where moms and young babies can be, your nursing room, I don't know what you're calling it, mother's room, with rocking chairs, with a TV monitor where they're a part of the service. The baby is able to feel love while the parent and the mom is hearing the words of God and Jesus. You also have in your sanctuary, and I don't know the language, so I may make up some language here, but I understand you've got a place down front that's going to have welcoming chairs for children. Maybe on those days when the children are owls and koalas, when they are interested in being a part of the worship, they're listening, they're engaged in the worship, but not in a way that makes it hard for other people in the room to engage in worship. We're going to talk about worship is active and worship is respectful. We respect the other people in the room who are also trying to worship. So I picture, and again, I may not have the language right, but I picture that down front space where there's comfortable chairs, welcoming chairs for families with children, being a time when the children are in a place of being engaged in worship. They're listening, they're learning, they're giving in a way that is respectful to the others that are behind them. Now, there will be some Sundays when the children need to move a little bit more. They've got a little monkey, a little cheetah coming out. They got a little tigger going, and they need to move a little more. In my mind, and again, I may not have this right, y'all can correct me. In my mind, I picture you have another place in your sanctuary that's towards the back where there's a table and chairs, child appropriate table and chairs. And in that place, I can see the children also engaged, also listening, also giving, but they may be in a place where they need to move a little bit more. So they can draw, they can color, they can move around a little bit, but still in a respectful way for the other people in the room who are trying to worship, who are trying to give to God. Then I understand there's another space that is glass enclosed. And on those days when their cheetah powers are growing strong, or those tiggers are just going to town, there's a place where they can go and move around more and be a little more active. Do I have this right? But still be a part of the giving to God that's happening in the service. Y'all, I don't know. I have not run across any other church that does it this way. And I love it. That's saying to the families and the children, whatever place you're in today, there's a place for you to give to God. There's a place for you as a child, for you as a family to give to God. Any comments there? Do I have that right? Any clarification? I'm doing on time. I can't see if there's glare of it. All right. Let's move on. Let's talk some specifics, okay? This is kind of like, maybe the discipline part. I don't know, a little more structure part. Number 4, as the helping adult, we want to let the children know ahead of time what behaviors will be encouraged or discouraged by you in the sanctuary, because Worship is active. We want them actively engaged in giving. We also want them, worship is respectful. We want them to have respect for the other. And I would say to a child, in worship, we give to God. Everybody in the room is trying to give to God. So we want to make sure we are helping everybody in the room give to God, not doing things that would get in the way, that would make it hard for them to give their thoughts or their time to God. So things like, I might say to my child, Miriam, have you noticed that there are times in our worship service when the room is invited to stand up? Notice that? What do you think I'm going to do when the room is invited to stand up? Well, I'm going to stand up too. What should you do when the room is invited to stand up? You stand up too. You'd be surprised how many times children prefer to sit when the room stands. I would encourage you to encourage your children to stand when the room stands. Number one, that's getting some of their wiggles out. That's an appropriate time to move around a little bit, get some wiggles out. Number two, it's getting them in the rhythm of being part of the group. They're part of the worshiping group now. So stand when the room stands. I might also say, there are times, Jacob, when people in the room are invited to sing. Guess what I'm going to do when the room sings? I'm going to sing too. What can you do when the room sings? You can sing too. And again, an advantage you have is you've got your hymns, your songs sent to you ahead of time. So one thing you could do is I looked at the order of worship just a minute ago. You can look to see in the songs that you're singing, are there any repeated lines in those songs? I forgot now what it was, but there was some repeated line this coming Sunday. And you could tell your children ahead of time, we're going to sing these words a lot in this song. Let's practice them. And on Sunday, when we sing these songs, let's hold hands. And every time it's time for those words, I'm going to squeeze your hand and you can sing those words. And then if you don't know the other words, you know what we can do? We can sing la, la, la. I might sing la, la, la with you. God likes all of our voice when we sing. So we can sing la, 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 or we might sing love, love, love. Anything that gets the children a part of being a part of the worship music. I might say to a child, there are times in the room where people are quiet and listening. They're thinking about God. They're giving God their thoughts. They're giving God their love. You know what I'm going to do during those times? I'm going to be quiet too. I'm going to be thinking about God. What can you do during those times? Let's get quiet. If we need to talk during those times, let's whisper to each other, okay? Let's practice whispering. You get the idea? So you're letting the children know ahead of time what's going to be happening in the service. You're talking with them about what they can do during those times. I also want to talk with them about what you're not going to encourage. Things like, because people in the room are trying to think about God, give to God, we want to do things, we don't want to do things that makes it hard for people to do that. So we don't want our arms or legs to be up high when people are trying to listen, because we want to help them think about God, listen to God. We want the noises that we make to be soft noises when it's quiet. So things like, if your foot starts tapping, or your finger starts tapping, and that's making it hard for other people to listen, let's think about something. Maybe you and I can hold hands and play a finger game during quiet times. Maybe I have a soft toy that you can hold during a quiet time. But we're teaching our children that there are quiet times, and part of respect in worship is remembering that other people are thinking about God and giving to God during those quiet times also, and helping our children, not shh, 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 but how can I help you? Let me help you in the quiet times. Whisper to each other. I'll hand you a soft toy. The bathroom is one. Decide ahead of time about what your family rule is going to be about the bathroom. And you as a family will make different decisions based on your children and their needs. But it is an idea that a rule might be you don't leave the worship service to go to the bathroom because it's hard for people. It gets in the way of people thinking about God when we're up and walking around during the quiet times. So, you might think, maybe I'm not going to stop and get a drink before I go in. Maybe I am going to stop at the restroom, before I go in. But you make the own decision. It's for you. And again, let me stop and say, Remember that door we opened? No judgment. Everybody in here is going to make the decision for what's best for their family and their child on that day. A few minutes. Let's look at number 5, prepare and practice. Again, I want to tell you that you have a huge advantage that you've got the order of worship given to you ahead of time. And so you can, and I would really encourage, if you have a child in your home, I would encourage that you, for not every week, but many times, particularly in their beginning years, you print out the order of worship, sit them down at the computer with you, and go over elements of the service with them. Talk to them about what's happening. What's happening when Dr. Fetterman plays the piano? What's happening when somebody stands there and talks about what's happening at church this week? What's happening when somebody stands up there and talks a long time about God and the Bible? And I felt like we wouldn't have time to go over all of that today, so I wrote some words in your handout just to give you a little idea, so you can read some of those, some samples of language that you might use with the children. This is what's happening. This is what I'm going to do during this time. Here's what you might do during this time. Some ideas, because our goal, our job, is to help train them to be active and respectful worshipers, people who give to God. I want to point out a few of them to you. Opening song. I want to point out ones, particularly ones where their children are asked to be quiet for longer. Now, during the singing and the giving, I mean, that can be a part, that could be moving, but like the opening song or anytime there's instrumental music, that can be a hard time to sit still and listen. So one thing you might try, and I think you might even just try this in your own family, just grown-ups, everybody try this. Turn on a classical music station. It's great to do in the car. It can be a game you play in the car. Music with no words, just instrumental music, because we have that in the church. And ask the children, and you play it too, what story do I hear in this music? What do I hear when this music is playing? I think I was going to do it with Miriam Hayden last night, and then we just didn't. I was afraid Miriam would say, oh, we already did. But I think you would be surprised at the children's responses. Picture, try playing some classical music or pull up a clip of Dr. Fetterman playing some of the music at church and ask children, or you try it, what do I hear? And I would expect you're going to hear children say, I hear butterflies turning somersaults. I hear dinosaurs stomping up the stairs. Children are accustomed to seeing stories and seeing pictures and music. Think about the media that they watch. Their movies all have a musical underscore going on. So that's not a new skill for them to think about, what do I picture when I hear this music? So if you practice that at home, and then in the worship service, when there's instrumental music, what do you hear in that music? Oh, I think I hear a dinosaur. What do you hear? You see what you're doing? You're drawing their attention, and you're keeping them engaged in listening. I'm listening, and engaging myself in this. So that's one thought. Let's talk about the sermon. The sermon is the long stretch of time. I should tell my children. When you have to sit still and listen for the long time, and I'll say, I mean, when you get to sit still and listen for the long time, there's some things, depending on your child's age, there's some things you can do. You have the advantage, again, at Holmeswood, is that your pastors nearly always include a story in their sermon. So while the child may not be able to stay engaged for the whole sermon, you can nudge them. Here comes the story, because children like stories. It can be a story from the Bible, it can be a current story, but your pastors nearly always, I mean, you've noticed that, they nearly always include a story, and children like stories. So cue them in. Here comes the story. And then depending on their age, a game that you can play, and I would imagine by about age 4, maybe younger, but at least by age 4, you can start a game of, I'm going to listen for a question in today's sermon or today's story. And on the way home, I'm going to ask a question and see if we can remember what happened in this story. But the best part is get the children involved in listening for a question. I might say, hey, Jacob, here comes the sermon. Are you going to listen for a question today? I'm going to listen for one. And then the child might, if they're not a writer yet, they can say their question to you and you can write it down, or they can write their question down. And you can see how over time that becomes a great game you can play. You could even do like little prize, pick what restaurant to go to for lunch or something like that. I don't know. It's just fun. So listen for questions and have them create questions that they can listen to. A tangible thing, if you want to get a little notebook for your child and it's their worship notebook, they could certainly easily draw pictures, take notes during the sermon, and it's their book that they use every Sunday when they come to church. You might give them a word to listen for. The pastor today is going to be in his sermon. He's going to talk to us about God and how God wants us to live. I wonder how many times he's going to, or she is going to say God in the sermon today. I'm going to listen for it. And they could do things like maybe they have a pack of stickers. Every time they hear God, they put a sticker on your arm. Or maybe you have stickers. Every time you hear God, you put a sticker on their arm. But you get the idea, something that's interactive, but drawing them towards listening. Let me do one more. I'm talking fast, I know. I apologize. Tithe and offering, or the time of response at the end. Y'all help me with this. I mean, if this is not a good idea, if it doesn't work, we'll put it aside. But when it's a time for response, that's a time when the children can be active. So one idea could be if the children are involved in getting an offering at that time, let that be part of your Saturday night work. They prepare the envelope ahead of time. Do give them the offering envelope before the time of response. If you just hand it to them right at the time of response, it came from you, it wasn't theirs. But even if you give it to them when you first come into the worship room, they've got it in their pocket or their purse. If they've possessed it a little while, then it's theirs. And so, if that's something that fits with your tradition or your family tradition, the children, that could be a part where they literally give to God. We said we're giving to God, and we're giving money to help people, to help our church, to help people know about God. Another idea is, and this one, what you think, if they have paper and crayons, they could draw, particularly during the sermon, during the time when it's harder to sit still and listen. Draw a card that says, I love you, sunshine, happy, whatever they want to, and time of response. That could be something they bring forward and put in the baskets down front that the church could then use when you are giving baskets or care to people. You would have a stack of cards from the children. Jesus loves you, I love you, sunshine, flowers, whatever. Because we are short, because I've talked too long, I'm going to stop. The other tips I think you can read on there, but let me just ask, are there any questions about what you see about ways to engage them in the worship service? The bottom line is we want them to feel love. We want to teach them to be active and respectful worshipers. We do that by letting them know ahead of time what we're going to be doing in the worship service, why we do it. We're engaged with them during the worship service. Give them tips on what to listen for, telling them what you're going to do, reminding them what the words of the song are, doing little finger squeezes, nudges, winks with them. Whatever it takes for us to draw their attention to what's happening in the worship service and teaching them to be active and respectful worshipers. I ask a question. First, I have two questions. First question is, those of you who have children in the worship service, grandchildren, your children, do you have ways that caring adults can help you in the service? If you were to say, this would really help me, help my child feel loved and a part of the worship service. Thoughts, any requests? You've got an audience here. Any requests? I would offer a few, some that I see you do, that I saw you do this morning with Miriam. Acknowledge them, even if you're just waving to them, not crossing their boundary lines. Some children are like, I don't know you, but waving to them, having an attitude that you're glad they're there, acknowledging their parents, not judging. As you do, maybe send thoughts to Laurel, and it can be something of continued conversation. My second question, go back to your objective, your goal, what you want to accomplish today. Is there anything else we need to touch on? I feel like I talk fast. Okay, I have one more question. Number 6 on your handout, benediction. While Laurel goes, are y'all comfortable if the children, or Audrey and Owen in the chocolate room, are you comfortable if they come in for a little while? Okay, and Miriam, I think, is Jacob back there? I'm going to talk to the children a little bit about some of what, I'm just going to touch on it. I actually can't, they don't know me, so I actually can't do it very well in this setting. But when you go home, these are things you can work with and talk with and do with your children and grandchildren at home. My final question to you all is, what are the closing words said nearly every Sunday in Homeswood services? I'll be. How about that? And that just takes us back full circle, doesn't it, to what we talked about. What do I want for my child? What do I want for children when they're in a worship service at Homeswood? I want them to feel loved. You are loved. And if I can do that, by keeping things simple, preparing on Saturday night, engaging with my child in ways that make them feel a valued and contributing part of the worship service. I'm laying that foundation. All the while they're hearing God, Jesus, Bible, the words of their faith. They're connecting. In this room, there is love. God is loved. I am loved. All right, so when the children come in, what I'm going to do is talk with them a little bit. Actually, I'm terribly prepared for this. I wasn't, anyway. We're going to talk with them about a little bit about what we talked about. And I'm going to show them some pictures of things that happen in a worship service and talk about things that they can do or might like to do during those times in a worship service. I may need a help. There's a part where there's a Bible verse. Would somebody be willing to read? It's Genesis. God said, let the sea be filled with living things, let the birds fly. Would somebody be willing to read that? Get to that point. I need a volunteer. Who can I hand the card to? Would somebody be willing to read a Bible verse? Okay, Laura, thank you. I'll just have the children sit right here on the floor. If anybody wants to move up to closer chairs, if that's easier for you, go ahead. And again, I'm just going to touch on it with the children. This is when the work of the helping adults come in. This work is really done best in your home, in the time before they get into the sanctuary, but also when they're in the sanctuary. We review names. I've got Jacob, Audrey, Owen, and Miriam. Any other children here?
Alice.
Oh, Alice, yeah. And Hayden. Alice and Eliana and Hayden. I see you. I see you. Hey, we're waiting for Miriam and Audrey and Owen to come into the room. And then we're going to look at some pictures. Where is the,
I'll show the owl,
where is it?
the
White
pillar. Yeah,
Oh, there we go. The owl?
that's what it's called.
I don't know that. We're going to look at some pictures. Here they come! Here they come! Yay! Hey, Miriam, Audrey, y'all come on up here. Jacob, come on up here. Owen, hey, let's sit right. Oh, can we see right here? Yeah, let's sit right here. Let's see. Jacob, Audrey, Miriam. Tell me your name. Brianna? Brianna. Who else we got? Owen. Hey, you know what? And my name is Pam, Miss Pam. There's Owen. Hooray. And look, there's Eliana. Ellie. Hayden. There they are. Hey.
Hi, Hayden.
Hey, I am so glad y'all came in here with us. Have you had fun in your room, what you've been doing today? Guess what? We've had fun too. You know what we've been talking about?
Yes, Miriam.
Yeah, there they are. Our friends are here. Do you know what we've been talking about in here? It's a word that I bet you've heard before. It's this word, worship. Worship. Have you heard of that word before?
Yeah.
Worship. You know where I hear that word sometimes? Sometimes on Sunday, I hear people say, after BFG today, we're going to go to worship. We're going to go to the worship service. Sometimes I hear them say, hey, before we go to the worship service, let's stop at the restroom. I hear them say that. I wonder, bathroom, restaurant. I wonder, have you ever thought about what that word means? Worship. What does it mean? I'm going to worship. What does worship mean? Can I tell you what I think about? I think about God, worship God. And I think worship is when we give to God. Sometimes we give him things with our hands. Sometimes we give him things that are like inside us. We think about God. We give him our thoughts. We think, hey, God, I wonder how big you are. Hey, God, I wonder where you live. We think about God. We give to God our thanks. Sometimes we say, hey, God, thank you for making my friends. Thank you for making butterflies. Thank you for making dinosaurs. Worship is when we give to God. We give him our time, we give him our thanks, we give him our, sometimes we say, I love you, God. Sometimes we sing songs that do that. Hey, I'm gonna show you some pictures. Look what I have. I'm not gonna show you the pictures yet. I'm gonna hold them this way. These are pictures of things that we do when we go to the worship service, where we go to give to God. Hey, so hey, Miriam, pick one. Just pick a card, any card. Let's do one at a time. Let's let Miriam go first, and then we'll take another turn. What is happening in that picture? Let's hold it where the friends on the TV can see too. Can they see it? I see. This is something that happens in our worship service. You know what's happening? She is singing a song all by herself. She's singing, she's giving to God when she sings her song. Sometimes I like to listen when she sings, and I like to listen if she sings the word God or if she sings the word love. And I might say, hey, Audrey, let's listen when she sings her song. Can I hold your hand in there? And I'll say, if she sings the word God in her song, let's squeeze in. Squeeze! Squeeze! I'm trying to think of a song about God. Here, hold my hand. Our God, squeeze, is an awesome God. Our God, squeeze. I might listen when she sings that song. And every time she says a word that I'm listening for, I'm going to squeeze somebody's hand next to me. Let's do another one. All right, pick one. What is that one, Brianna?
She's speaking.
She is speaking. Can everybody see that one? That's Pastor Laurel, isn't she? And she is standing at the front of the church and she is speaking. You're right. I happen to know what she's doing right here is she's telling all the people in the church things that are going to be happening pretty soon at church. She might be saying, we're going to have a special lunch and all the people are invited to come. Or she might say, we're going to have a party for the children and they're going to be Easter eggs. So she's telling about the thing. You know what I like to do during that time? I like to listen, because what if she tells about something that I want to do? What if she says, oh, there's going to be a party and the children are invited and they're Easter? Well, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to say, hey, I want to go to that. Hey, mom, dad, hey, friend, are you listening? Are you listening to what she said? Because I want to do that. Listen to this. Okay, what do we have? What is happening in this picture? That's your dad. That's Pastor David. What is he doing there? He's talking. He's talking and see how he's looking down? I happen to know that at this moment he's actually reading from the Bible. The Bible is the book that tells us about God, right? And nearly every Sunday, somebody reads from the Bible. You know what I like to do then? I like to listen because the Bible helps me to know about God. Now, sometimes I like to help listen by listening for certain words. Maybe Laurel is close. Laurel, can I put you on the spot? I have some words written in the back here, and these are words that I actually, you should be looking at them. These are words that I actually wrote down from the Bible. These words were in the Bible. So we're going to pretend like this is the pastor, and he's standing at the front of the church. See the picture? And he's reading to us from the Bible. And I'm going to say, hey, Jacob, this is when the pastor is going to be reading from the Bible. And I want to listen to this part. But you know what I'm going to listen for? I'm going to listen for every time I hear the word God. And when I hear God, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wink at you. And I'm going to say, hey, when you hear God, will you wink at me? Okay, let's listen. Right. We ready? Here goes.
This is from Genesis 1:20 through 21. God said, let the seas be filled with living things. Let the birds fly above the earth across the huge space of the sky. So God created the great sea animals. God created every kind of living thing that fills the seas and moves about in them. God created every kind of bird that flies, and God saw that it was good. Wow.
Wow, we were really listening. We heard God. Well, I got tired. Did I get tired of winking? Okay, let's do another one. Okay, Owen, what you got? What is happening there? It is Pastor Alan. What's he doing? I'm talking. Sometimes he talks. Sometimes he helps us to know when to sing, doesn't he? Sometimes he asks us to stand up when we sing. You know what I do when he asks us to stand up? I stand up. What do you think you could do when he asks us to stand up? Stand up. Yeah. Well, sometimes I don't. Sometimes. I want to tell you about sometimes when we sing the song, sometimes it's a lot of words and I don't know all the words, but sometimes I can learn some of the words. Can you learn these words? This is my Father's world. Now, in that song, Father means God. We use different names for God, but in this song, I knew if I practiced with her, she would tell on me. Not tell on me. I did. Can you sing that with me? This is my Father's world. I want everyone to put your hands right here in mine. I may need some help. Hold on. What do I do with my paper? I don't know if I can remember all the words. Yeah, we'll do the best we can. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Hold my hands right here. And we're going to pretend like we're singing this song. But every time, see if you can feel me squeeze your hands. Can you feel that? Okay. Every time I squeeze your hands, that means it's time for you to sing. This is my Father's world. I got to put the words here where I can see them. Okay. Here we go. Let me get my hands under here. Now, what happens when I squeeze? Squeeze. Okay. Ready? Go. Squeeze. This is my Father's world. And I'm not squeezing. And to my listening ears, all nature sings and round me rings the music of the spheres. Get ready. This is my Father's world. I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees and skies and seas. His hand the wonders wrought. I will run in the grass. I will run in the grass. This is my Father's world. I will jump for joy. I will jump for joy. This is my Father's world. I will smile real big. I will smile real big. This is my Father's world. You did it.
I'm ready.
I know. Let's see what else we got. Want to do another one? These are things. Let's see who hasn't had a turn yet. I've kind of lost track. Audrey. Kind of lost track of who has and who hasn't. What's happening there?
He's talking to us.
Some of you are in that picture. That's Pastor Laurel in the worship service where we give to God.
Yeah, that's you.
Oh, but there's a time when the boys and girls they say, hey, we're so glad you're here today.
And Marion.
Come on here with Pastor Laurel. And we will talk about God together. That's a fun one. Let's do maybe one. Let's do this one.
I need my.
What is that one?
He is talking. Hayden, Don, and Miriam.
Thank you for
Yes,
showing.
he's
Good job.
talking. There's a time in the service where one of the pastors talks to us about God and how God wants us to live. You know what I like to do during that time? I like to listen because I like to learn about God. Hey, when it gets hard to sit still and listen, sometimes we help each other, don't we? Sometimes I say, hey, let's play finger games together. Sometimes I say, hey, I'm gonna listen to see if the pastor says the word love. And when he says love, you know what I'm gonna do?
Loving.
I'm gonna like nudge you a little bit. God is love.
Do it to me.
You do it to me too.
No.
Love one another. I'm listening. I'm hearing the word.
Do it to me.
Love is kind.
Hey,
Hey, I want you to do it to me. You listen this time. How about love each other? Oh, you got it. You were listening. You heard it. Yay! Hey, you know what? I plan to come to the worship service tomorrow.
What?
Worship.
I'm
We
gonna.
got God. We give to God. And if I see you, you know what I'm going to do?
What?
I'm going to say, I'm so glad you're at church today. I'm so glad you came today. And I'm so glad you came to the worship service.
I'm not gonna go to the worship church
I will miss you.
because my grandma and grandpa are gonna come tomorrow. And you and Papa Rod and Mama.
How fun. Do you know that I'm the program mama? And I am here too. Hey, we're going to say goodbye now, okay? But I will look for you tomorrow if you're at church or the next time we're both here together. Okay? I will see you next time. All right. The end.
Yay.
Nothing.
No. Thank you.
Good to see you guys.
Bye, Hayden.
Bye. Elsie, you want to say bye?
See you later.
Bye.
See you later, friends.
Fun.
Bye.